I guess could be quick too, is Bitcoin's market cap flipping gold, right? We've talked about how market cap's downstream of price. At what point, is there any point in trying to guess when Bitcoin's market cap will flip gold? Do you have a estimate on when that could occur or what you think a catalyst for that could be? So clearly self-custody is important. Where I work at the Bitcoin Advisor, we do a lot of multi-sig solutions. We've been seeing exploding demand, both from individuals, families, high net worth individuals for their estate planning, but then also companies and churches are starting to have interest as well. So when it comes to looking at the future of Bitcoin adoption and Bitcoin custody solutions, what do you think the future of those custody solutions are at helping people protect against that rehypothecation craziness? And what role do you think multisig has in that?
I'm pretty optimistic on multisig. I think collaborative custody is important. I think it's natural for people to, there's a good service to basically be a key provider for someone to say, okay, you can hold 2 out of 3 keys in different locations, and we can hold the third key and provide technical support, to help you. I think that's a useful service. Because if I'm trying to, figure out where to put 3 keys, I think, okay, one in my home and one in my safe deposit box. And what am I going to do with the third one? Am I going to have another safe deposit box? Am I going to, it's nice to have a Bitcoin dedicated company to be like, I'm going to hold that for you in some way, either in an app or in themselves, or, that it's a useful service. So I do think that's important. I also just think in general, better UX among devices is useful. So for example, not everybody needs like Michael Saylor level security if they're just trying to store $10,000 worth of Bitcoin, right? A tap signer or a couple tap signers might suffice, right? And so we need kind of that spectrum of like vault level security, like if the Ocean's 11 team's coming after you, like can you defend against that versus like just basic stuff, like if your house gets burned down, do you lose your Bitcoin or not? Um, just basic stuff, like how hard, like to make it kind of idiot proof. Like don't make it really hard to accidentally lose your Bitcoin or get them stolen in some way. And there's a spectrum there, and they're all important. And realistically, probably, only a percentage of people are going to want to self-custody most or all of their coins. And so then the second thing is how do you make custodians that don't suck, right? So how do you make custodians that don't like, I mean, it's part of the Wild West of developing in a semi-unregulated environment, like people with crazy hair in the Bahamas and like they're gonna, so it there's, I would trust, for example, Cash App, a publicly traded company, before I would trust some offshore exchange, right? If I wanted to hold some percentage of my Bitcoin there. Same thing for any other, like Fidelity, for example, right? If I still have to worry about government, confiscations or things like that. But it's like I can be pretty sure that they're not like gambling with my tokens on the side. They're not like, they're not doing sketchy things there. And so it's that spectrum between actually serious audited custodians versus making it easy for people to self-custody in a security framework that makes sense for the amount that they're trying to secure.
I agree with that, and I do think more people are going to adopt that, especially as Bitcoin's value goes up. I think that more people are going to want that diversification and security. What makes Lynn so special to me is her ability to think critically from a first principle standpoint with an engineering background, as well as being able to communicate those thoughts clearly and concisely. I happen to agree with her. Number one, I happen to agree that market cap is set at the margins downwind of price, and therefore Bitcoin's price in terms of US dollars could appreciate incredibly rapidly, perhaps by orders of magnitude in each coming cycle. Secondly, I happen to agree that a lot of rehypothecation and fake paper Bitcoin and yield products are ahead of us. I think volatility will continue. And therefore, number three, I happen to agree with her that I think self-custody is really important for you to consider and really important for you to consider urgently. And number four, Lynn and I both talk about how collaborative custody, multi-sig solutions could be a viable option for many people in the coming future. And so, if you have an interest in taking self-custody, if you have an interest in setting up a multi-sig solution and collaborative custody partnership, I do work at the Bitcoin Advisor precisely for this purpose because I think it is the future. You can find me in the link in the description below at the Bitcoin Advisor, where our primary goal is to help you securely transition your Bitcoin off exchanges into your own hands and into your own self-sovereignty. It's really important that you begin considering what happens to you in the event that you lose your seed phrases, what happens to you in the event that you pass on. Will your children, your loved ones, your company, your spouse, whomever your descendants are, what happens to them if your keys have issues or have troubles and have maintenance. So if you want someone to help you through that process, one-on-one, to create a multi-sig vault, to help you create an estate plan, to be an ongoing collaborative custody partner, and help reassure you in the face of all these products and all these innovations happening to Bitcoin atop the base layer, if you want to have someone assist you in the coming years and hopefully coming decades, Bitcoin Advisor could be a good place for you to consider. If you go to the link in the description, you can learn more about me and why I'm personally there as well. And I will send you dozens of pages of free documents, both about our company specifically at the Bitcoin Advisor and multisig and collateral custody in general. Purely educational content for you to learn about. Dozens of pages with great content, great perspectives, ideas, and thought-provoking perspectives for you to consider in the coming months and years as you take more and more of your Bitcoin into self-custody. So not only, again, do you get information about collaborative and multi-sig custody in general, and you also get information about the Bitcoin Advisor specifically. Also, I'm happy to send you, or you'll find a link below, a comparison of what Bitcoin Advisor does compared to our competition, what we provide, and our goal is to provide 10 times the value for half the cost. So if you have an interest in multisig, I strongly encourage you to consider it now. More and more companies are only going to have the option of multisig. See, a company or a charity or a church cannot pursue the option of a single sig solution. They have to pursue multisig solutions. So as an individual, as a company, or as a board of a charity or church, whatever the case, if you're interested in a multi-sig solution for the long term, for cold storage, I highly encourage you to start doing so now. Whether that's with me at the Bitcoin Advisor or elsewhere, I strongly encourage you to do it because that rehypothecation will continue, Bitcoin's rapid price appreciation will continue, and in those events, demand will skyrocket for these precise kinds of services and for time with people that are experts in this field. So, again, once more, please check out the link in the description for the Bitcoin Advisor where you can find me. You can schedule a meeting with me. You can book a free consultation with me there. I'm happy to answer any questions you have. Again, happy to send you dozens of pages of free complimentary information for you to learn more about your Bitcoin and learn more about your Bitcoin self-custody solutions. Because again, whether you work with me or not, it's far more important. Please just consider taking self-custody as soon as possible. Link in the description. Thanks. In these last few minutes here, I'd love to ask you a macro question because we've been talking pretty much about Bitcoin specifically. I'm curious your thoughts with the secured overnight financing data and everything, the US, Euro dollar, emerging markets and everything. A lot of people predict that we're going to have de-dollarization and all this monetary energy sucked out of the US. But at the same time, with risk return, custodial risk, obviously, in fiat political currency land, what do you think the trend there is going to be? Do you think that more monetary energy is going to flow to the US dollar as it's the least bad fiat currency compared to everything else? Or do you think it's going to de-dollarize like a lot of people think?
So I think we're going to see around the margins de-dollarization in the sense that, the dollar's not the cleanest sheet in some ways. It has a structural trade deficit. It has bigger deficits as percentage of GDP than many other countries. But it has network effects. It has economic vibrancy. It has rule of law. It has deep capital markets. And those network effects are very hard to replicate. A group of BRICS countries has trouble building a currency and the depth of capital markets and the liquidity than what the dollar offers. So around the margins, I think we'll see major players like China and others seek to have more bilateral currency trade. If China and Brazil do a ton of trade, it makes sense for them to say, okay, let's just do some of this directly and net it out. And then maybe on the margins we'll hold gold or dollars or whatever, but we can just net some of this out more directly. And so I think we'll probably see more of that over time. Um, in like the gray markets, you don't really see de-dollarization at all. I mean, if you go to the Egyptian street market, it's not like, the dollar is getting chipped away by the Chinese currency or the euro. It's like mostly people want dollars. It's like, and if we look at stablecoin markets today, it's like 99% dollars, right? And so network effects tend to approach one, but in some of these big economic powers, I think we will see ongoing reserve diversification, payment method diversification, kind of escaping the network effect of the dollar. But that's a long-term story that's unfolding over time.
Yeah, it'll probably take a very long time to unfold. And one of the things that also take a long time, but I guess could be quick too, is Bitcoin's market cap flipping gold, right? We've talked about how market cap's downstream of price. At what point, is there any point in trying to guess when Bitcoin's market cap will flip gold? Do you have a estimate on when that could occur or what you think a catalyst for that could be?
I assume 2 to 3 cycles. I just think it's mostly time. I think you can make rough estimates based on what map out 2 or 3 cycles and give a rough multiple for what kind of cycle would have to look like. and you can get kind of a framework for how that becomes realistically possible. But I wouldn't venture to guess, is it 2 cycles? Is it 3 cycles? Is there some tail risk that's going to accelerate or decelerate that? So I can have a rough idea of what that might look like. Um, but liquidity feeds on liquidity, right? So the more liquid Bitcoin gets, in some ways, the more attractive it gets. Basically, you can't
Mhm.
you can't attract $1 trillion pool of capital until you have a lot of $1 billion pool of capital on board. And so I think Bitcoin's kind of going through that process.
Yep, the process will continue. Well, Lynn, thank you very much for your work. Please, everyone, check out her book. And until next time, thank you very much, Lynn, for coming on.
Thank you.